Hello, everyone, and thank you for being here today. I'm Danny Smith, Executive Vice President and co-owner of Color ID, one of the world's leading integrators of advanced identity solutions. Welcome to Color ID's Campus Forum series, continuing the conversation. Today's session is titled Going Mobile for Under $1 Million and is the fourth session in the five-part third forum series. The fifth and final session of the forum series will run next Tuesday, May 26th at 1 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. And that session is titled ID Card Printer Report. Please feel free to invite colleagues from your institution or your company or anyone you know across the identity industry who would benefit by attending. A registration link is located on our website at colorid.com. There you'll find a drop-down titled Webinars. At the beginning of today's session, there will be a Menti poll to learn more about the common challenges you, the audience, are now experiencing. It's simple to do. You just open a browser on a PC or mobile, go to menti.com. That's MENTI.com, and then type in a 6-digit code on your screen. We'll give you the code and explain more during the presentation. You know, it's been really nice to develop the relationships that we have over the last 20 years, and we're incredibly grateful that we come together today and stay connected. Once again, we have a large group of identity industry attendees joining us today. So, as we say, whoever you are and wherever you may be, we welcome you. And we hope that you find the investment of your time a great value and encourage you to be interactive in these sessions. Now, leading today's technical discussion will be David Stallsmith, Director of Product Management for Color ID. David brings a wealth of technical information from over 14 years of working with advanced identity solutions. Now, of course, many of you know and have worked with David over the years because he works closely with manufacturers, vendors, and end users to promote understanding of the complicated products and services that comprise our identification industry. He's contributed to the decision-making process at many universities, healthcare facilities, and government agencies as they have considered acquiring contactless, smart card, mobile ID, and biometric systems. And since 2006, David has presented annually at the NACCU conference, and he's also presented at NACCU's annual and leadership conferences, the European and Canadian Campus Card Users Conferences, and full-day identity summits hosted by some of the most prominent universities in North America. Joining David on today's session as moderator is Mark Deegan, Color ID's Corporate Marketing Manager. In addition to managing Color ID's marketing department for the past 16 years, Mark also juggles the duties of account representative for some of our most strategic partners, both customer and corporate. He's also the project manager for Color ID's banking-related customers. Mark and David's technical knowledge concerning advanced identity solutions is a testament to their commitment to our industry and a great example of the value differential Color ID employees bring to our customer and our corporate partner relationships. And just a few housekeeping items and we'll get started. Again, we're really encouraging these sessions to be as interactive as possible, so please utilize the question box to submit questions. We'll answer all the questions at the conclusion of the presentation during the Q&A period. In addition to asking questions, you'll see that there will be live polls throughout the presentation, so please be sure to participate in those and be as prompt as possible. Also note that Color ID's entire higher education team is again listening on today's sessions and are available for any questions or follow-up discussions. Just call or shoot your account manager an email. Also, a reminder that everyone who completes the 5-session forum will receive a certificate of completion in a Color ID swag bag filled with some nice items. Color ID will confirm everyone's attendance, so you don't have to worry about doing anything regarding that. However, each session does require separate registration, so please make sure that you registered for the last session, which will be next Tuesday. Thanks again, everyone, for the privilege of your time and allowing us all to come together and stay connected. I'm going to turn this over to David and Mark to get started. David?
Thanks, Danny. And yes, welcome, everyone. Let's kick this off right away with a poll. Mark?
Thanks, David. So if everyone could travel to the URL menti.com and plug in that code 425581, we're going to ask you a question. And that question is, how do you feel about your phone? There we go. And once we start seeing some answers getting submitted here, we will have them start flying up on the board and we'll go over those as they come in. Yep, I'm attached to my phone too. Never leaves my side, unfortunately. Probably giving my kids not the best example. Dad's on his phone again. Let's see what else any other folks have their thoughts about their phone. Lifeline, absolutely. It connects us to so many different applications, and essential. Yep, definitely couldn't agree with you more on that. Addicting, yes. That's a good one. Definitely addicting. Breaks a lot. Okay. Someone has some butterfingers that probably drops on the concrete. I can relate to that. Helpful, fun. Don't leave home without. Absolutely. Hate it. We've got a good group, a wide-ranging audience today, I think, Dave.
All right.
Cool. Well, let's take those and let's jump into the presentations. I'll follow up with you all on whenever we do the live polls.
All right. Well, very good. Thanks for sharing your thoughts with us this morning. We will have some more polls as we go along, and then some other things we're going to talk about. Where is mobile today? And even what is mobile? What are we talking about? The components of a mobile ID system, integrated solutions, and let's just get started somewhere. So let's get on with it. Where is mobile today? And it is a broad question. In fact, I'm going to take us back in time. I was given a presentation at NACCU in 2012 on card technology. And you would think cards, printers, formats, chip types, but there was, even 8 years ago, enough of a buzz that I had a slide on mobile. And here it is, what's hot? Phones. And at that time, we thought near field communication was going to be the thing, because at any moment, the iPhone was going to arrive with NFC support. It hadn't yet, though, but you could get NFC in a Samsung or an LG or a BlackBerry. Even 8 years ago, Apple was dragging their feet on NFC, but you could buy an SD card that supported NFC, or you could buy a special SIM card that supported NFC, or worst case, you could buy a case that had an NFC chip and antenna. They only cost, I don't know, about $200. But if you really wanted NFC, there was a way to get it back then. It wasn't well supported. There wasn't much you could do. But at that time, we were sure it just wasn't that far in the future. Well, coming right into the present time, we did not 8 years ago see that there would be so much use for the phone totally away, nothing to do with NFC. And I was at a conference just a few months ago and met some folks from MODO Labs, and they help universities and anyone else build mobile apps. So if you have a mobile app on your campus, not unlikely MODO has been involved in at least one of them, to the point that they're actually now giving, within their own world of apps that they've helped people build, they're giving awards to various universities: best recruiting and admissions, special purpose modules, student engagement, communication, student developed apps. So the students are working with MODO to build apps, student orientation. These are school built apps. If you want to hire somebody to help you beyond that, Guidebook is out there. They've been there for a while, and they also have a whole suite of apps that you can purchase for use. Include them in your own campus app portfolio, or run them independently. So these are all kinds of things that are going on with phones on campuses these days. And then the campus safety apps, very important. They are often provided by the integrators, the one-card integrators. There are also third-party apps you can buy, and they provide emergency and event management. You can use them for attendance, check into events, and of course, help, which is a big deal. And lastly, there are apps provided by the vendors on your campus themselves. So if you have Starbucks, Topingo, Starbucks or Chick-fil-A, your students may be using those companies' apps when they make their payments. Now whether they're completely integrated back through your one card system or not may or may not be a concern. also Tipingo, Grubhub, and who did I see? Somebody was looking to purchase that. But anyway, that world of order ahead has also become involved in their processing transactions on the phone. Everything there is happening on the phone. So you're not even getting near a point of sale terminal necessarily to make these payments and order ahead and pick up whatever you've ordered. Also, Print Copy sometimes provides a mobile app to support their print management systems, and often these can be connected back through the one card system so that the payments actually come out of the student funds held in that one card system. So, you know, we were, when mobile was first thought of for transactions, we never, I don't think we ever thought this far ahead that we'd be doing all these things totally outside the realm of what we imagined at the time. So let's do a poll here, Mark.
Let's kick it off. Okay. My mouse has started jumping around on me randomly. Here we go. Percent of campus transactions involving third-party apps. Please select one. Let's see what type of input we have from everybody on this. Okay, I think that'll work. Let me close the poll and I'll share it with you guys. 88% are utilizing 0 to 20%, and 13% of you are utilizing 20 to 50% campus transactions involving third-party applications. Perfect. Thank you all.
Okay, so not a large number of this group. In some of the other groups, we've seen sometimes almost as much as half, because this is the third time through this particular presentation. We've seen almost as much as half in the 20 to 50%, and you know, obviously it just varies group to group who's doing what on what campuses. This group mostly are containing things within your one card system then, so not so much mobile outside there yet, but it will probably happen. So let's talk about what makes mobile transactions work. And interesting, 8 years ago, again, maybe the last time I'll use that reference, we were thinking about NFC, which is effectively a card-like transaction. The phone acted like a card. You presented it to a reader, and then you got something. The door opened, your transaction went through, whatever. Just as if you had held up a card to that reader. You know, there may have been some configuration differences or whatever, but at the most root level, you held a device up to a reader and the reader read a number and you got what you wanted. Now, in the middle there was a lot of conversation about, well, would it be a network side or would it be card to reader, phone to reader? You know, what's going to dominate here? And the applications, the mobile applications I just described, actually are server-side applications. Those are very few of those now, and a couple I'll mention outside of that, but most of those are things happening from the phone to the server to the vendor. But what we're talking about right now from here forward will be about using the phone like a card with a reader to send a number, and then you get what you want from that system. And there are right now 3 ways of sending mobile credentials to a system. And NFC, like we've mentioned, which is prominently, famously part of the Apple Pay approach, but Android has had NFC support all along. Bluetooth, which is also available on Apple phones and on Android phones, and it is right now used largely, if you're using mobile in Bluetooth, it's largely around access control, but it doesn't have to be that way necessarily. And then barcode. If you go to Starbucks and you pull up your Starbucks app and it says pay now, click that, it generates a one-time use barcode that you hold up to the scanner, and it hits your card, takes some cash off your Starbucks card, gives you a few points, and it knows you're there. It knows who you are and it knows you're there. So that's the barcode doing that. Also boarding passes. If any of you remember, we used to get on things called airplanes and boarding passes on our phones would get us through the gate. So 3 kinds of credentials, and then you have to have the appropriate readers to read those credentials. So you may have a reader that reads Bluetooth and or NFC. If you do, then it is probably programmed with keys that are proprietary to your system or to your system provider. This information, you want it to be secure. You don't want these ID numbers being broadcast to everybody like prox cards do. So encryption keys are involved, and the readers know the keys, and the credentials are encrypted with the keys. So there's often a level of proprietary information there. And then the readers themselves have to interface with the systems behind them. So if it's a reader at a POS terminal, has to communicate that ID number to the terminal. If it's on a door, it has to communicate with a door access panel or whatever the back end of the access control system. Print copy machine, same thing. So we got the phones acting like cards using 3 kinds of credentials. We have readers to read those credentials. And then, not least by any stretch, is the mobile credential management system. And if you are handling a lot of your card transaction provisioning, issuing cards manually right now, then you are the credential manager. Congratulations. Do you have a credential management system? No, we have a credential management person or people. And so that is a way to go. And it gets stuff done. You can read emails, you can read and type, you can, they're all different really good things that human beings can do. But if you're trying to automate stuff, then the mobile management system has to do essentially these 3 functions. It has to issue the credentials because it's got to send them out over the air, OTA, to the phones. And it has to get there somehow, and then once they get to the phone, they need to provision the credentials in a mobile app or in a wallet on the mobile phone. Now they're in the phone, they're provisioned. Now you have to manage those credentials. So if there are any changes during the life cycle of that card holder or credential holder, they change residence halls. They need different door access. They change their role. They're not students, they're now students and employees. So, and then at the end of their term on campus, you need to deactivate them or pause them or revoke them. So that's the management function. And then also, whenever the credentials are created and whenever things change, the management system needs to transmit that information to other systems so that whatever you're headed to with your mobile phone, your credential will be recognized by that system, and again, so that you get what you want. Talk about user experience. If data isn't moving to the right place at the right time, that's not going to provide a good user experience. You're going to be waving your phone or your card or whatever at a reader and nothing's happening. That is not a good user experience. So let's talk about the mobile credentials themselves. First of all, a little, again, history now. NFC, near field communication. It was started as a forum by Sony, who made phones and all kinds of stuff, right? NXP, which primarily made chips at that point, NXP semiconductors, and Nokia, who had a lot to do with networks, but mostly they made handsets back in 2004 too. So those are the companies that started the forum. They got the idea, we're going to make a chip, and it's going to sit. It's going to be a protocol for using a near field communication chip, which is, there was a standard for what the chip was going to be. It was going to be in a phone, and the data was going to be securely stored in the SIM card, which is also the card that the network operator, T-Mobile, AT&T, Verizon, they use their authentication information on the SIM card. So they own that chip. And the idea was that's really secure. So maybe we could squeak a little real estate out of that too and put some NFC information on there. The information would flow from the SIM to the NFC. It'd be very secure, all hardware, no problem. Didn't really work because the network operators kind of didn't want to share that. And if they did, there was going to be a cost. And so that isn't exactly the way it happened. Also, what didn't happen the way they thought was early on, why are we going to do NFC? Well, it'll be great for marketing. If we put an NFC chip on a poster, you can go up and you hold your phone to it, and it will bring up information about a movie or about this thing we want you to buy or specials. So really marketing was kind of the early idea for NFC use and why it was originally developed. And so, kind of interesting to watch how the purposes have changed over the years. NFC for transactions really didn't start to happen until smartphones. And it actually took Android, the development of, they developed a way to securely store a credential on the phone itself, the phone memory, rather than on the SIM. And then that could be data that they've made a path for that to travel to the NFC chip so it could be communicated to a reader. HID and ALLEGION both got on this. They said, that's great. We have NFC capable readers. We'll build mobile credentials. And they both did, but only for Android, because Apple wasn't playing well. They said, well, we're working on Apple Pay. Our NFC is going to be for Apple Pay. And of course, can't blame them. Financial world is much, much larger than opening doors. I mean, if you imagine you're making a phone and you can put something on your phone that enables it to be used as a credit card for everybody that carries your phone to make payments, and Apple users tend to not be the people buying the least expensive stuff at the stores. They were looking at having the opportunity to have a significant revenue source from their Apple Pay app. And so they dedicated their NFC to Apple Pay, and that was the end of it. The interesting thing is, as you see this in this picture here, they're holding the phone up to a Verifone terminal to make an Apple Pay transaction, and of course the iPhone immediately shows you your credit card. Unfortunately, Apple left that bug in there, and if any of you have had the opportunity to use an iPhone using a Bluetooth credential on a reader like an HID reader, HID also has NFC enabled, and when you hold your phone next to the HID reader next to your door to walk in to your office, your bank card pops up on the screen. And it just has been that way for years, and Apple cares so little about that it was only recently that they bothered to do anything about it. So they just haven't seen anything to do with transactions other than Apple Pay until just the last couple years. So for years, they were the stick in the mud. They slowed this whole thing down. So after HID realized, and HID, the reason we're talking about them as much as we do is because they make most of the readers that are in use to open doors around North America, and they make a lot of the cards. They've just either they had market domination, and or they bought other companies that had competing products, and so they have a lot of real estate in the whole access control world as far as cards and readers go. Well, when they saw Apple wasn't going to open up the NFC chip for them and their app, they decided, well, let's use Bluetooth. So Bluetooth, BLE, Bluetooth Low Energy, was a way to also transmit a credential from a phone to a reader. And the cool thing is that is not blocked on iOS. So your iPhone can hold a Bluetooth credential and it can communicate with an HID reader. It's very secure, and it has the potential of a much better range than NFC. Instead of 1 or 2 centimeters, it's like 8 feet or even more, depending on how the reader is tuned. Problem is, it was introduced in 2013, and it seemed like perhaps it was just too early. Like a few universities got a few pilots going at that time, and it just didn't go anywhere. And then after a few years went by, then word started to leak out that Apple was working at that time with Blackboard originally, but they were under NDA, so we never knew what they were doing, of course, but we knew they were doing something. And they were developing mobile credentials with Apple. Not that it hadn't already been done, it really was a business agreement. Like, how much is Apple going to charge, and under what circumstances? And we've learned a lot more about that as they've been introduced. But let's talk for a moment about the mobile credentials themselves. The phone sends a card number, and if it's an access control number, it's going to be something like Corporate 1000 or 26-bit or whatever your access control system is looking for. That is the number that's stored on your mobile phone. It could also be a student ID number or anything else. Remember, the reader is just reading what comes off of the phone, so just like it does with a card. Also, sometimes the applications can be more elaborate, like Salto, which stores audit and permission data on the card. And then when they made an app for the phone, the same thing. So there's more than just a number with Salto, which means it's kind of unique to Salto. If you know, that one sort of functions by itself. The app and the readers works fine in its own world. It's just not something that translates well to other systems. And then transit apps also, if you're, may have a mobile app with stored value or a card with stored value. So in those cases, it's more than just an ID number, but mostly it's just an ID number. So HID developed this BLE, Bluetooth Low Energy, and it's available on their iClass SE readers and on their new line of readers. If you want to upgrade your existing readers, you do a firmware update for NFC. You can physically add a BLE module to readers, I think in the last 6 or 7 years or so from HID, the iClass and multi-class SE readers cannot be upgraded. Then using the Reader Manager app, which runs on an Android phone, and it communicates over Bluetooth with the reader. You just plug the module into, and you can load keys, you can set the configuration of that reader. You may or may not have to use flashcards. If you're loading the Apple app onto the reader, then you probably will have to use flashcards. But if it's a different, like the HID, then you probably don't have to use flashcards. So either way, the Reader Manager is a real step forward in communicating with these readers. Also, Bluetooth, like I said, it'll go up to 8 feet, which means it's good for parking. For example, you can also dial it down in the app or at the reader, so it doesn't have to be a long range. You can also turn that off. Here's that new reader from HID. They are the first out of the gate with new readers, the new generation of readers that's built for BLE and NFC and OSDP. And the Allegion's had readers for years. Other companies have had readers, but in the handful of major manufacturers that have been there for a long time, they're the first one out of the gate with a brand new edition. And so here it is. No mag stripe available on these, it looks like. We'll see if they come out with that a little later. It does have enhanced contactless polling, so that when you hold your iPhone up there, you're not looking at your bank card. It also has enhanced read range for reading contactless cards like CIOS. If you're looking at locks, electronic locks, and you want to use mobile with them, Sargent, for example, the IN120 from ASSA is the parent company of HID, so they put an HID reader in there, and it will read mobile, just like HID wall mount readers. Over at Allegion, the SCHLAGE locks, they read NFC. They do not read Bluetooth credentials from mobile. They've always had an NFC mobile credential on Android. Now they have an NFC credential that can sit in an Apple wallet, but it has to get there through integration. So, and that's the case, that's an Apple thing right now. So if you want to have an NFC credential on your iPhone, it's going to be in your Apple wallet. And the only way to get that thing into the Apple wallet is through an integration with Apple. So Apple is holding control over that wallet feature. You can get a Bluetooth credential and run that all day long on Apple or on an iPhone, and you don't need to talk to Apple about it. But for these NFC credentials, Apple is the gatekeeper still on the device you paid them $1,000 for. So SafeTrust, meanwhile, they also decided to build a Bluetooth solution, and they made a really cool little thing they call a Saber decal. It's a little board, and in this case, they make a new reader cover to replace a lot of existing reader covers, and you can see the little cutout on the back of that cover there on the right, where the Saber decal pops in there, and then you pop that cover onto your reader, and what the decal does is it speaks Bluetooth to a phone, And then it speaks prox to a prox reader. So these enable you to turn your prox readers into mobile Bluetooth readers. Now the mobile will be a SafeTrust mobile credentials. You know, they have their own portal, they issue their credentials, you have to get them from SafeTrust, but it isn't, you know, it's another approach, and maybe you save half the cost of replacing your reader infrastructure because you're just replacing covers. It is a nice mobile portal. They have GPS built into it. They know when and where transactions have been made with their credentials, and they have, you know, all the usual things that the credentials are emailed and provisioned and all that stuff. SafeTrust also provides BLE technology to wavelengths, which also feature the LEAF protocol for key management and some other clever things there around custom keys. Also, RFIDs IDEA's PC prox readers are available with SafeTrust BLE. So if you want to use your mobile phone on a desktop reader with Bluetooth, then RFIDEA's has that. And Isonis also is working with SafeTrust and their Bluetooth. They also offer a handful of these logical access dongles to plug into various different types of computers or tablets, so you can use your phone for logical access if you want to do that too. So essentially they're a software company. They make credentials, they do make the hardware thing, the decal, and then they're working with a number of other different manufacturers. I already spoke a little bit about the unique encryption keys for mobile. It's important that the phones be well protected. The data sits on this network device. It's available, and you know, we don't think about that too much, but our phones are on the network, and you don't want that information just sitting there in the clear. So encryption keys for the data, either both at rest and in transmission, and then also the readers have to know those keys. So there's a little bit of work configuring keys for your credentials when you first set up your system. But once done, then you just order with the appropriate part numbers, and everything works going forward. If you're wondering how these keys work and is it like a database key, no, not exactly. This is an encryption key. So think of it more like a password rather than the ID number itself. It's the password that enables you to get to the ID number. But because of this extra security, in some ways, credentials and readers are even less interoperable than contactless smart cards. In a couple ways of thinking about that, you could put a bunch of different apps on a smart card chip and work with different kinds of readers, each of them secured with different keys. You could put several different kinds of chips on a smart card, which significantly boosts the price of those cards, but it lets you use one card on different readers and systems. On the other side, though, phones can carry a bunch of different credential apps. So you do have to, in most cases, you have to pay for those apps, but it's one phone. So if you need to get into 3 entirely different systems, you could have 3 cards, or maybe you just have 3 apps on your phone. So, you know, we haven't seen a lot of adoption yet like that, but it is certainly a possibility, and I expect we'll see more of that in the future. If you want to read these credentials at point of sale or printers or anything else, you can buy these readers like this, and a bunch of companies offer these. This is an Omni key. You can be ordered, it comes with NFC. You can also read BLE. RFIDEA's makes a reader, as I said, it'll read NFC and BLE. Identiv makes NFC readers. And those are all USB, so you plug them in and they can either be keystroke or RS-232 serial data if your application supports that. If you need RS-485, there's a company, STID, that makes readers with that and a two-way communication. And we've had instances where to communicate with a certain kind of point of sale terminal, we had to use RS-485 and create some data strings to precede and follow the actual ID number itself. There are a lot of different options. There are a lot of ways to get data from a phone into any kind of system. So just to be clear though, one thing about the readers, NFC is a broad standard. And I do hear people frequently saying, well, we want NFC. And it's like saying, you know, I want to be near something. it's so broad that it's not helpful. Some people mean phones when they say NFC. I think that's kind of what's turning into these days. It's becoming sort of a generic reference to a mobile credential, but it also still is a standard that applies to cards. So when you get down to it, if somebody says, well, here, this does NFC, and you're getting ready to write a check, just make sure that it supports the NFC that you have in mind, because some readers will support some or all of these various protocols: MyFair, EV1, EV2, CIOS, iClass, Prox, or Bluetooth low energy. You can get readers that maybe read one of those or that read all of those. You just need to make sure the reader you're looking at reads what you want to read. So sometimes you even have to do some testing to make sure you get to that point. So time for me to stop talking and have Mark ask you a question.
All right, everybody. Based off of what you've heard and what you know, would you consider mobile only and no cards? I'll let you have a couple of moments to submit your answers, and then we'll go over those. Alrighty. Flip it around here. So 71% of you say maybe in a few years. And then we've got a two-way tie at 14% for yes, please, and no way. And then 0% saying, do we have a choice? Very good. Thank you all for your quick submissions.
All right. Yeah, that's an interesting result. A few years, and we've heard in some of these other sessions, and even some conversations just in the last week or two, it looks like we might be trying to get to mobile sooner than we expected. And you know, and that's just card offices are sitting there trying to figure out how to get cards in students' hands for whenever classes start again on campus. If you were just doing mobile over the air, then it is a way of getting things out there. Let's talk a little bit about provisioning mobile. So this is a little graphic from HID. They very kindly created this, and it sort of describes the process that a lot of the companies use in provisioning the mobile credentials. On the left there, you sit down at your PC or your laptop and you log in, you log into the portal, you pull a credential out of there, you load an email address to attach to it, which then goes to somebody's phone. They open the email, it downloads the app, or however that works, pushes the credential into the wallet, and then that phone is now provisioned and can be used with the appropriate reader. So it's a cloud database, it's email, it's download of an app or some other kind of provisioning, and then it's a credential securely stored on the phone. Those are the pieces. Now I'm going to show you this, not that I'll explain why we're going through this here the next few slides, but if you're using the HID ORIGO mobile portal, for example, which would be the cloud provisioning service for HID's licenses of Bluetooth or NFC, you log in here, you decide what kind of license you want to issue, you put in the email address, and then you set some parameters and you send that to them, and then you can attach a mobile credential to them, which in HID's portal actually looks like a card. They want you to be thinking they're cards. And then if you're the user, or the card holder, you get this on your phone. Here's the email, welcome, and click this link and download the app. And then once you get the app says, okay, register. And then you get a key, a long crazy number there that you plug in usually from an email, and then you click register. And then back at the admin panel, they are notified that yes, they were registered, and then the end user on their phone, actually the picture of the card itself pops up, and you know that you are provisioned, you have a card, and you will go use your phone and open a door. And then there's a dashboard so that the admin person can see, oh yes, I've provisioned a lot of people, and there they are, and here's how it went. And then if you want to report the following people have not provisioned and they need to, all that stuff. So typical cloud portal things going on there with all of that. And then on the mobile app, you have a few configurations yourself. You can decide if you want this on the how you want it to behave on your phone, and then do you want to provision, if your admin allows you, twist and go for long distance throwing of that Bluetooth credential or not. Again, like I said, it's configurable. So both the admins have some control over these, and then the people at their phones also have a few controls over how the app operates. Then when somebody contacts the card office and says, I lost my phone, and so you then can revoke that mobile ID in the HID portal. You turn it off. It is no longer on the phone. No mobile ID issued. So whoever's walking around with that phone, if they know the screen lock or whatever it is, they can get that far, then it will show that no mobile ID is issued. So that has been pulled back. It's a license. It can be reused. And most of there are a lot of similarities between the ways all the different companies manage and provision these credentials, but that's HIDs. But the point of those last 8 slides, I counted them, is that it's a pretty labor-intensive process. It's not too bad on the user end. You click a few links. Probably the most annoying thing is that you have to go back and copy that security code into the app when you first provision it, which is security. And so it's okay for small populations, pilots, but if you have a large group of people, if you're trying to do this for 1,000 or 10,000, that's a lot of work for the ID management person. So what we want is an ID management system, and who provides that? Well, the one card integrators do. Transact has their own way of doing this. It's not HID. Well, they actually do now support HID credentials, or for credentials that work on HID readers, they manage their own credentials and how they're provisioned on phones and how they work with their readers. Seaboard, Atrium, TouchNet is working on this, and there are a couple other companies that are introducing these kinds of integrated mobile identification credential things. So, and access control systems, some of them have actually integrated this HID system. What you do when you integrate these solutions is you move a lot of the work, like on this screen, the stuff kind of in the middle, printers, cards, mobile, all that stuff, the provisioning, moving data around, all what we like to think of can be moved into an identity management layer or solution. And so as the admin over here, represented by the screen that says admin, communicates with the identity management solution and says, provision this user, give them a mobile credential and print them a card, then that role there can be filled of the service can be provided by either the one card integrator or an identity management system, of which we've been talking on these webinars. There are several of them: Card Exchange Cloud, Unify. There are a number of different solutions now that are coming out, and they're really quite good and powerful. They can just do identity management, and they can provision these credentials, they can manage the card printing, they can then provide data to the access control system or the HR or student information system or the one card system, may be actually receiving data from the identity management solution rather than the one card system being the center of everything. And that it's not that that's a bad thing, it's just that sometimes it kind of ties you up, because now the company that's providing your financial transaction system is also the company you need to go to for all this other support for third-party systems and integrations. And we all know, as the projects get more and more complicated and more schools ask for services at times like this, which is not just about COVID, but also about kind of a turnover in the ID, the whole world of credentials. All kinds of stuff is changing. Software, hardware, mobile, card technology, a lot of things are changing right now. And I think ID management is going to be one of the solutions that's going to come out of this as something a lot of folks are going to go, you know what, we actually need a solution here to stand in the middle between the card office administrator and everything else. So that's kind of what we're looking at Color ID. We're developing it. We built this chart to sort of imagine how this would all work. The ID management layer talks to the mobile credential portal, handles all that, those 8 slides with HID, most all of that happens automatically. People get their credential on their phone, off they go. They buy stuff, they walk through doors, and then also the print job could go out of that same ID management layer. So just we're imagining a not too distant future here based on some products that are rolling off out of the plants right now. They're putting the finishing touches on them, and we're kind of excited about that. We're talking about it. We're just going to see how this all develops, but we're also not just making this up. A lot of our customers are universities that we aren't even working with directly, but they're asking, what can we do? What other options do we have? So all that about identity management. Let's jump back into the topic at hand and ask one more poll. Mark?
Okay. Next poll question, everybody. What are the hurdles to adopting mobile for transactions? And you can select all of them that apply. And again, I'll let this go for just a little bit as you guys respond. Alrighty, I think you guys are done. I'll flip it around. 78% are stating cost. Okay, 56% are lack of support from admin, 22% uncertainty due to the current events, and then 11% simply stating it's too hard. Thank you, everybody.
All right, and as always, cost. We'd have that if it just didn't cost so much. Well, let's talk about the business of mobile. And wow, that is really weird. What the heck? Oh yes, animation. You build these presentations and then you forget you actually did something sort of clever. Too clever for me. Okay, so the mobile business model. What do you need to do? Well, you need to buy new readers because if your phone is acting like a card and it's communicating with readers, more than likely the readers you have need either an upgrade or need to be replaced. Then you need to get mobile credential licenses because there's a lot of software work, as you can imagine, based on what we talked about with the portal in the cloud or on your prem or wherever that is, the mobile app or the wallet or whatever's happening on your phone. I mean, there's a lot of development there, and it has to be supported whenever anything changes. So credential licenses have a real cost. They are usually annual costs. Also, that integrated mobile ID management, you don't necessarily have to have that, especially if you're starting out, but it is certainly necessary if you want Apple NFC, Apple Wallet access. You just, as of right now, no way to get that data into the wallet without an integration, and that's an Apple business model. The one card integrators provide everything you need. They're kind of turnkey approaches. So the credentials, the readers, and the management piece all come from Transact. You get Transact credentials on your phone, you get Transact readers, but they also will work on HID and Allegion readers. They've recently added those, which is cool. I mean, now you can actually leverage some existing readers. So that's a little less expense to get there, but you do have to load Transact firmware onto those readers to make them work. Seaboard kind of leads with HID and Allegion. Actually, it just depends on what you have more of on your campus. Do you have more Allegion locks, SCHLAGE locks, or do you have a lot of HID readers? Allegion is NFC only. Seaboard supports that, and they support the Apple Wallet also. And then with HID, it can be BLE or NFC. Atrium is also working on this, and there are secrecy things there, but they're working on it. If you go to the Apple website, support.apple.com. I mean, I just Googled. I said, what's going on with Apple on campus? And it tells you right here, you can if you can see if you can use your student ID card in wallet, contact your school card office. Here's what you need. And you kind of read this list: iPhone 6, okay, no problem. Apple Watch, sure. Apple ID, I've signed in. Latest version of your school student account management app from the App Store. And the solution used by your school card office to confirm identity and generate secure passwords. Those two things right there sound kind of innocuous. Oh, I bet we have that stuff. Those are the integration pieces. Those are the things that have to be done by the integrator. So it's on the Apple website, but if a student read this and didn't really understand the English language, the way it was written, there's kind of not real clear. They might come into the card office, hey, we got all this stuff. Well, no, you don't. The bullets 4 and 5 kind of need to be integrated. So, you know, it just, even Apple is not right up front about saying, this is only available through the following systems, and if they're integrated and if they paid a lot of fee, you know, whatever it is. So, you know, it just tell us what's going on. Can you do it or not? You know, but it's buried deep in the language, even on their own support website. So what else is going on? Well, some universities have integrated HID ORIGO mobile platform themselves into their own websites and mobile apps, and that avoids the Apple NFC limitation. Some schools use their access control system to manage HID mobile, not a lot, but a few. You can order the credentials from anybody and plug them into your access control system because it has done that integration. And like I said, Allegion and HID now support the Apple NFC wallet through the integration partners again and again. Other mobile providers, Linnell. If you really want to get mobile going and you're a strong Linnell campus, maybe you just want to walk away from everything else everybody's doing and just go straight with their Blue Diamond. Blue Diamond readers, Linnell credentials. It'll work with Prox, MyFair, Desfire cards. It's been out there for a while. It's certainly an option. And if lock people have been buying lots of Salto locks, then it may make sense for you to put the Salto mobile app on your phones, because it will communicate over Bluetooth with Salto locks, which is kind of cool. So what do we know at this point? Well, we know there's a strong interest in mobile access and payments, at least as far as like, how could we get there? What's involved? It's probably in the future, 3 to 5 years, for example. We know cost is an obstacle. We know there are a number of options. We also know that we have to replace a lot of hardware, and the integration doesn't have to be, but can be a big project. Here's one I thought, I've been talking about this one for a while. A campus could leapfrog to mobile from MagStripe or Prox. So if you've been hanging in there for 15 years using really inexpensive MagStripe cards for access control, payment, everything else, thinking, oh, we should probably go to a more secure card someday, maybe now or soon would be the time to start thinking about, well, maybe we can just go to mobile, because you're going to have, at some point, you will upgrade your infrastructure. And why wouldn't you just go right to what's available on mobile? It will still support cards, because mobile readers usually read some kind of cards too, so you have that option. But you know, rather than stopping hard at a contactless solution, maybe you do look at mobile. Then, like I said earlier, you can have a variety of apps on a phone. So if somebody really needs to get through HID readers, SCHLAGE locks, and Salto locks, you can get all 3 of those apps and put them on a phone, and one person with that one phone can use them on each of those various systems, even if the systems are not themselves integrated. And then the last thing is, in this post-COVID world, how do we get credentials to our people if they can't come into the card office and pick up a card easily? Well, over the air, OTA, is certainly something that a lot of people are talking about. So how do we get started? If you don't have $1 million, because we've heard these numbers, we've heard more than $1 million from some of the early schools that have gone in this direction. But you can get started. You can, and one of the questions that we asked in the poll, and some of the people responded, yeah, not enough executives or high-level administrators think this is useful or important, and perhaps doing a pilot would help win some affection for this possible project if you think it's valuable to your organization. And you could get started with as few as 20 credentials in HID world. SAFETRUST also, SCHLAGE, whatever. Well, SCHLAGE is NFC, so it's only going to be iPhone. But if you want to get started with a small number of credentials and just a handful of readers, maybe even one reader on a door that a very important person uses every day, you can use Bluetooth. And you can just get started. It's very easy. You do have to do a little bit of that portal management, credential management that I discussed, but if it's a few people, it's no big deal. Once you get things going and maybe put a few readers at some POS terminals, just let people see how it works. A lot of times people kind of think, it's too much bother, but then they see people using their phones and it's like, oh, that's easier than I thought. So if you're looking at 2 or 3 years, you can start upgrading your readers now. When you have new readers going in, a reason to replace readers, and you can begin to make arrangements for integrator or identity management support. You can get the word out. Start your own little marketing campaign. The students, the young people, I think in a lot of cases kind of expect this. So again, kind of, I don't want to say take the temperature of the people coming in, but get a feel for what's expected. What do people think about this? And then you can kind of start navigating in this direction. The one thing that is significant is after all those years of not much, some products got developed, nobody really bought them. In the last 18 months, a lot has happened. And Transact introduced the solution with iPhone NFC, and then Android support, and now HID, and then Seaboard is now there with this, and then the full compliance that was originally, every reader has to be replaced completely, 100%. Well, actually, we're finding out not really so much. If something's out of scope, maybe it's not necessary to replace every single reader, especially expensive readers on multifunction devices or whatever, So there are ways. So a lot has happened in 18 months. What's going to come in the next 18 months? Where are we going to be in 18 to 24 months? So that is about all I have to say about this topic. And we're about out of time. So let's do one more poll. Perfect. Mark?
Yeah, last poll, everybody. So how soon would you like to go to mobile? After we go over these results, then we've got a few questions to pitch to Dave, and we'll go from there. Okay, I think got everybody. So 63% say 3 to 5 years, 25% are saying next year, 13% are looking at 3 to 5 years. So that's a fairly good. I would think the 2 to 3, but that 25% being next year. What do you think of that, Dave?
Yeah, 2 to 3 years. Wait, so yeah, next year is real soon. And that I think that's what we're talking about with the COVID pull forward. Like all of a sudden, whoa, maybe we need to accelerate this thinking. And actually 63% for 2 to 3 years. Is that what I'm looking at? That's soon. In the academic world, if you want to get something done within 2 or 3 years, it means you're going to probably start moving soon, because, budget fiscal years go by quickly. And so it's just a very interesting time. A lot of options, still more products arriving, more services. And like I said, there are at least 2 other companies that are about to introduce some mobile stuff that's really cool too. So it's a very interesting time. In 5 years, we'll be looking back, or in 8 years, I'll be looking back at this slide deck going, who would have thought? So interesting, kind of looking forward to the future, but we got plenty to do for now.
Absolutely. So is there an easy way for someone like a university, who's curious about jumping in and kind of testing out the waters, for mobile to see if it's right for them? Are there easy, I don't know, starter packs or stuff like that exist?
Well, yeah, you can buy bunches of credentials as few as 20, and you know what the list price is about $5 from a number of the different providers. That gives you access to the cloud. It gives you a 1-year license for that term, and then you buy a reader, or you buy 2 or 3 readers, and maybe you buy a USB reader for a point of sale terminal. You know, for under $500, you can actually have a pretty good pilot out there, and a number of people can just start using it and find out, what's this going to be like? How does this feel? Is it really cool not to have to carry a card, or is it not that big a deal? You know, and then if you figure out, you know what, I don't think this is that big a deal, then when people walk up to you and say, hey, we really need this thing, you have a conviction of an experience. You know, I tried it, I don't think it's that big a deal, or we loved it, and now we're moving forward, and we got to find a way to get this on campus. So personal experience is very important, and pilots are a good way to do that, and for not very much money you can get started.
Gotcha. Okay, so on to the questions. First question, what other infrastructure needs beyond readers are required on campus for having real-time communication between the credential issuing system and systems that consume that mobile credential data?
You mean like for identity management?
Yeah, I believe it's kind of like, you know, outside of just having, you know, that mobile credential, I think they're asking what other key components they have to consider in setting all this up.
Well, I mean, really, the simplest thing is you just need the credential. You need a reader. The reader attaches to an existing system, and then you put the credential number into that system so that it can access the door, or whatever. So, you know, there's not a lot involved there. That, at least for the pilot, a lot of that can be done manually. So just to get things started, it's pretty simple. Just a couple pieces.
Right, and I think it's probably, you know, fair to say that, you know, just because that credential is loaded onto a phone doesn't mean that, you know, what happens at the reader part is any different. You know, it's the same. What's happening at the reader, they get sent to your physical access panel. That's the same, correct?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. The reader thinks it's seeing a card, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
So as long as you get the card number, which is the mobile credential number, into the phone, and then tell the access control system or the point of sale system that's the number that represents this card holder, then the reader catches that number. The system thinks it's seeing a card.
Perfect. Next question, a short one. Are mobile credentials reusable?
Yeah, they are. Well, it depends on the provider, but usually it's an annual license. So if one user is using it and then a year, you know, 6 months go by and they leave the school, and you know, now you get that credential back and you can assign it to someone else for the remainder of that year.
Awesome. What kinds of considerations should we have about battery life on phones? What would a student do if their phone dies?
Well, it's a lot less of a problem than it was a few years ago. Phones have gotten a lot better. Batteries are bigger, and the operating systems manage the battery life a lot better. iPhone actually now on the later models has a reserve for Apple Pay. So even when the phone is dead, you can still buy stuff at Whole Foods, and you can still open a door if you have one of those integrated solutions. Now, if you're in the Bluetooth on Android, it really is just going to depend on the handset. But phones, like I said, our experience with phones it's just continually improving as far as battery life goes. So it can be a problem, but I bet people figure it out. I mean, you can't,
Right.
you know.
Bet on science, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's not an invalid point for sure.
Cool. Okay, well, Dave, that was the last question. So thank you all for participating and submitting those questions throughout the presentation today. Please don't miss out on next week's webinar titled ID Printer Report. And reminder that this webinar does require its own registration. So with that being said, on behalf of Danny, Dave, and myself, be safe out there, and thank you all for attending today's webinar. Good night, everyone.